I still remember the exact moment when everything changed. It wasn't when I scored 81 points against Toronto. It wasn't when I won my first championship ring. It wasn't even when I hit those 2 free throws with a torn Achilles number. The moment that truly defined my journey happened when no cameras were rolling, when no fans were watching, when the world was still asleep. 4:30 in the morning, the gym empty, except for the sound of my breathing and the familiar echo of the ball against hardwood. I had just missed a shot, the same shot I had taken 2,000 times that week. And something inside me broke. Not my spirit, something else. The illusion that had been holding me back my entire life. In that moment, sweat dripping down my face, legs burning from hours of training, I had what athletes call the moment of truth. It wasn't spectacular, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost imperceptible, like the subtle shift before an earthquake. I realized that everything I thought I knew about greatness was wrong. I'd grown up studying Jordan, Magic, Bird. I had analyzed their footwork, memorized their moves, dissected their games. I thought that by acquiring their knowledge, by duplicating their habits, by mimicking their mindset, I would become great. But in that pre-dawn silence, I understood the fundamental flaw in my approach. Greatness isn't inherited, it isn't copied, it isn't even learned. Greatness is uncovered, and the process of uncovering it requires something far more dangerous than hard work. The next morning, I arrived even earlier, 3:45. The security guard looked at me like I was insane. Again? He asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't explain what was driving me, not just to train, but to confront something within myself that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. By the time the sun rose, I had experienced something beyond physical training. I had come face to face with the deepest truth about excellence, that the external achievement is merely a byproduct of an internal revolution. Most people think the Mamba mentality is about outworking everyone. They think it's about the grind, the hustle, the never-ending pursuit of perfection. They're looking at the finger instead of the moon. The secret isn't in what I did. It's in what I understood that morning when the world was dark and silent, when there was nowhere to hide from my own truth. There's a reason most people never reach their potential, and it's not what you think. It's not lack of talent. It's not lack of opportunity. It's not even lack of discipline. It's something far more fundamental, the inability to confront what truly stands between you and your highest self. I discovered this truth during those solitary mornings when there was no one to impress, no one to compete with, no one to blame. Just me, the ball, and the ruthless mirror of my own limitations. I remember one particular morning when I couldn't make a shot, nothing was falling. In the past, I would have pushed harder, stayed longer, forced my way through it. But that day, something different happened. Instead of fighting against the struggle, I stepped into it. I became curious about it. What was this resistance trying to teach me? What was this failure trying to reveal? It wasn't about the mechanics of my shot. It was about my relationship with failure itself. You see, everyone wants the result. Everyone wants the glory. Everyone wants to stand on the mountain. But very few are willing to confront what truly stands in their way. And it isn't the competition. It isn't the doubters. It isn't even your own limitations. It's something far more dangerous, something hiding in plain sight every time you look in the mirror. My high school coach once told me, Kobe, talent will get you to the NBA, but something else will make you great. At the time, I thought he meant work ethic. I thought he meant resilience. I thought he meant competitive fire. All those things matter, of course, but they're not the secret. They're just the outer manifestation of a much deeper understanding, an understanding that I'm about to share with you, not as theory, but as lived experience. I didn't develop the Mamba mentality. I discovered it, like a sculptor finding the figure already present within the marble. It was always there, waiting to be revealed. And the process of revelation wasn't about building something new. It was about stripping away everything that wasn't essential, all the noise, all the distractions, all the comfortable lies we tell ourselves about why we can't achieve what we're truly capable of. Let me tell you about the most powerful revelation of my life, the secret that transformed me from a talented player into a legend. A truth so profound yet so simple that once you truly grasp it, you'll never see yourself or your potential the same way again. When I was young, I thought my greatest opponents were on the court. Jordan, Iverson, LeBron. I trained relentlessly to overcome them. But as I matured, I discovered something that changed everything. My true opponent was never wearing another jersey. My true opponent lived within me. And until I learned to defeat this inner adversary, I would never become who I was meant to be. This inner adversary has many disguises. Sometimes it appears as comfort, that voice that tells you you've done enough when your body is screaming and your lungs are burning. Sometimes it masks itself as logic, convincing you that no human can possibly work this hard or you need to pace yourself. Sometimes it even pretends to be wisdom, whispering that talent is enough or that some things are just impossible. I remember one December morning, 3 hours into my workout, my muscles failing, my mind begging me to stop. I had already made 500 shots. The rational thing would have been the rest. But the Mamba mentality isn't rational, it's transformational. In that moment of choice, between comfort and growth, lies the difference between greatness and mediocrity. There was a game against Boston when I sprained my ankle badly in the first quarter. The medical staff told me I was done for the night. My inner adversary agreed, offering the perfect excuse, a legitimate injury, a reasonable limitation. Nobody would question me sitting out. In fact, they'd praise my wisdom for not risking further damage. But something deeper in me recognized this as the ultimate test, not of my ankle, but my will. I returned to the court and scored 36 points. Not because my ankle didn't hurt, it was excruciating, but because I refused to let pain dictate my possibilities. Most people misunderstand what really happens in these moments. They think it's about pushing through pain. But pain is just information. The real battle is with the story you tell yourself about that pain. Is it a signal to retreat or an invitation to grow? Is it your limitation or your threshold? Is it your ending or your beginning? I developed a method for confronting this inner adversary. When that voice would tell me to stop, I would ask it 3 questions. Is this impossible or just difficult? Is this dangerous or just uncomfortable? Is this permanent or just temporary? The answers always revealed the truth. What seemed like wisdom was actually fear in disguise. What felt like protection was actually limitation. What appeared as reason was actually surrender. In my darkest moments, when no one was watching, when the cameras were off and the arena was empty, this inner battle raged most fiercely. People see the game-winning shots, the championship celebrations, the accolades. They don't see the war that happens inside the mind of someone striving for greatness. They don't understand that every external victory is first won or lost in this internal battlefield. I learned to treat my inner adversary with respect, but never with authority. I would acknowledge its concerns, recognize its fears, but I would never grant it power over my decisions. This is perhaps the most crucial element of the Mamba mentality. Not the absence of doubt, but the mastery of it. Not fearlessness, but the courage to act despite fear. Not the silencing of that inner voice, but the ability to listen without surrendering. The most dangerous opponent you'll ever face isn't the one challenging you, it's the one comforting you. The inner voice that celebrates mediocrity, that makes excuses sound reasonable, that transforms surrender into wisdom. This opponent knows all your weaknesses because it created them. It knows exactly when to attack because it senses your moments of doubt before you do. And until you learn to recognize and defeat this adversary, you will always fall short of your potential. The real secret of the Mamba mentality revealed itself to me not in victory but in failure. After we lost the 2008 finals to Boston, I faced the darkest period of my career. The world saw defeat. I saw something else, an opportunity to completely reinvent myself. While others slept that summer, I was awakening. 4 hours of training before breakfast, film study until my eyes burned, defensive drills until my body gave out. Not because I had to, because I chose to. Not to prove something to others, but to discover something in myself. Something beyond talent, beyond skill, beyond what any coach or trainer could teach me. I created what I call blackout days. Training sessions so intense that they would break most professional athletes. I would work until complete exhaustion, then find a way to work more. One particular session lasted 6 hours without a break. My trainer begged me to stop. My body was shutting down. But I had discovered something profound in those moments beyond exhaustion, a second wind that most never reach because they surrender to the first wave of fatigue. Beyond that threshold lies territory few ever explore. During those blackout sessions, something strange would happen. Time would dilate. My senses would heighten. The noise would fall away. The opinions of others, the expectations, the doubts, they would all vanish. What remained was pure clarity, a direct connection between intention and action, between vision and reality. This state wasn't just physical, it was almost metaphysical. A level of consciousness where limitations dissolved. What I discovered was that transformation isn't about adding more, it's about removing what doesn't serve you. Like a sculptor who doesn't create the statue but removes everything that isn't the statue, I wasn't becoming something new. I was uncovering what was already there beneath layers of comfort, beneath habits of mediocrity, beneath the weight of ordinary thinking. I made a practice of identifying my weaknesses with brutal honesty, not to beat myself up, but to liberate myself. Each weakness represented not a flaw, but an opportunity. When my right hand was stronger, I spent thousands of hours developing my left until it became equally deadly. When my jump shot needed work, I would take 1,000 shots every day until it was perfected. But the real awakening came when I applied this same principle to my mental and emotional limitations. The impatience, the ego, the need for control, these were the true obstacles, far more limiting than any physical constraint. Most people never experience this awakening because they're afraid of what they'll find. They're afraid that beneath their excuses, beneath their limitations, there's nothing special waiting to be discovered. But that fear is the final test, the guardian at the gate of your greatest potential. There was a practice where I badly jammed my finger. The pain was excruciating, but instead of stopping, I decided to use it as a teacher. I continued shooting, focusing completely on perfect form, perfect release, perfect follow through. With each shot, I was teaching myself something crucial, that circumstances don't determine performance. Choice does, decision does, will does. By the end of that practice, I wasn't just shooting well despite the injury. I was shooting well because of what the injury had taught me about focus and form. I remember sitting alone after a particularly brutal training session. My body was broken, but my mind was clearer than ever before. I realized that physical fatigue wasn't my enemy. Mental surrender was. The body can endure almost anything. It's the mind that gives up first. And in that moment, I understood that the ultimate battle wasn't against physical limitations, but against mental capitulation. The awakening requires total presence. I developed rituals that would snap me into this state instantly. Before games, I would sit in the locker room in complete silence, eyes closed, visualizing not just making shots, but becoming the essence of perfect action. I wasn't preparing to play. I was preparing to transform, to step onto the court as something beyond myself. beyond my name, beyond my history, beyond my limitations. This wasn't mystical, it was methodical. A deliberate practice of transcending the ordinary mind and accessing something far more powerful. The awakening isn't pretty. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and celebration. It arrives in moments of choice, in the space between stimulus and response, in that fractured second when you decide who you're going to be today. Not who you were yesterday, not who others expect you to be, but who you choose to be in this moment when everything in you wants to take the easy path. The transformation began with a simple question I ask myself every morning. What are you willing to sacrifice today? Not what do you hope to achieve or what do you want to become, but what are you willing to give up? Because true transformation isn't about acquisition, it's about sacrifice. I sacrifice sleep. I sacrifice relationships. I sacrifice being liked. I sacrifice normalcy. Not because these things weren't valuable, but because what I was becoming was more valuable to me. The world saw the results of these sacrifices, the championships, the scoring titles, the legacy. What they didn't see were the thousands of private moments of choice that preceded them. My day started at 4 a.m. when the world was still dark. By the time my teammates arrived for practice, I had already completed a full workout. They saw the results, but not the process. They saw the game winner, but not the 10,000 missed shots and empty gyms. They saw the triumph, but not the solitary struggle that preceded it. This wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about answering a question that haunted me. What am I capable of becoming if I remove every limitation, every excuse, every compromise? There were days when my body was shut down from exhaustion. I remember once training so hard that I couldn't lift my arms to wash my hair in the shower afterward. Most would call this excessive. I called it necessary, not because the physical training itself was magical, but because these moments were forges for my will. Each time I pushed past what seemed possible, I wasn't just strengthening my body, I was transforming my relationship with limitation itself. Here's what most people never understand about transformation. It happens in darkness, in silence, when no one is watching, when there's no external reward, when the only witness is your own conscience. The world sees you rise, but they don't see you rebuild yourself from nothing, over and over again. I engineered my environment to support this transformation. I removed distractions. I simplified my life down to the essentials. I studied masters in other fields, musicians, chess players, surgeons, looking for principles that transcended domain. I realized that greatness follows patterns, and those patterns always involve a radical prioritization. Not doing 1,000 things adequately, but doing one thing perfectly. Not being pulled in every direction, but moving with absolute precision in a single direction. I created a ritual for these moments of transformation. Before every workout, I would close my eyes and envision not just making the shot, but becoming the shot. Not performing the movement, but being the movement. This wasn't visualization as most understand it. This was something deeper, a complete dissolution of the boundary between the doer and the deed. This practice extended beyond basketball. I would study film with such intensity that I could predict my opponent's moves before they knew what they would do themselves. I would notice patterns, how certain players shifted their weight before driving left, how their eyes would betray their next pass, how their breathing changed when they were fatigued. I wasn't just watching, I was absorbing their essence, understanding them so completely that I could anticipate their actions in real time. The most profound transformation happened when I tore my Achilles. The world saw a career-threatening injury. I saw a challenge to transcend what was possible. During those months of recovery, I didn't just rehabilitate my body. I rewired my mind. I studied the game from new angles, developed parts of my game that had been overlooked. I turned what most would consider a devastating setback into an opportunity for complete reinvention. Those months of recovery taught me something unexpected. I had always approached transformation through action, training harder, moving faster, jumping higher. But now, forced into stillness, I discovered a different kind of transformation. One that happened through observation, through patience, through acceptance. I learned that sometimes you transform not by doing more, but by seeing more clearly. Not by forcing change, but by allowing deeper understanding. I developed what I called micro-excellence, the practice of bringing complete presence and perfection to the smallest actions. When I could only shoot from a seated position, I made each of those shots a masterpiece of form. When I could only do limited rehabilitation exercises, I performed each repetition with absolute precision. This wasn't just making the best of a bad situation. It was discovering that transformation doesn't require optimal circumstances. It only requires optimal commitment to whatever circumstances exist. This is the essence of the Mamba mentality that few truly grasp. It's not about being relentless for the sake of being relentless. It's about being so deeply committed to your evolution that every obstacle becomes an opportunity, every failure becomes feedback, every limitation becomes a laboratory for growth. Not because you're trying to prove something to the world, but because you've glimpsed what you're truly capable of becoming, and nothing short of that transformation will satisfy your soul. My legacy isn't measured in championships or points or records. Those are just the visible outcomes of something much deeper, a way of approaching life that transcends basketball. The true Mamba mentality was never about what happened on the court. It was about the internal revolution that made those external achievements possible. The real question isn't whether you can be great at your craft. The real question is whether you can be great at becoming in the self. Can you fall in love with the process of transformation itself? Can you find joy not just in reaching the mountaintop, but in climbing the mountain day after day when no summit is in sight? I wasn't born with the Mamba mentality. I created it choice by choice, day by day, moment by moment. And so can you? It begins with a decision not to be the best, but to become the best version of yourself without compromise, without excuses, without an escape route back to mediocrity. This mentality isn't reserved for athletes or celebrities or the naturally gifted. It's available to anyone willing to look in the mirror and make a simple yet profound decision that from this moment forward, you will no longer negotiate with the weaker version of yourself. You will no longer accept stories about why you can't. You will no longer settle for less than what you're capable of becoming. The world will tell you, this is extreme. The world will tell you to be balanced, to be reasonable, to lower your expectations, to avoid disappointment. The world is designed to produce mediocrity. Greatness requires you to defy the world's gravitational pull toward the average. Remember this. The gap between average and exceptional isn't talent. It's not circumstance. It's not luck. It's the willingness to do what others won't do, to think what others won't think, to believe what others won't believe, starting with what's possible for you. My life wasn't about basketball. Basketball was just my canvas. My life was about discovering what happens when you refuse to accept the limitations that fear imposes. What happens when you commit so deeply to your evolution that failure loses its sting, when criticism becomes irrelevant, when obstacles become invitations. The secret of the Mamba mentality was never about winning, it was about transformation. And your transformation begins the moment you decide that your potential is more important than your comfort, that your growth is more important than your safety, that becoming is more important than being. This is my legacy. Not what I achieved, but what I became and what I'm inviting you to become. The question isn't whether you can, the question is whether you will